Hello, friends, and welcome back to Stories About Entitled People. How I let Karen humiliate herself in a grocery store. This happened years ago when my wife and I were living in a mostly African-American neighborhood in Detroit. I'm white, my wife is black, and yes, that detail actually matters here. At the time, I worked for the city government as an office manager, which meant that every day I wore a white shirt, tie, slacks, and usually had a pin or two sticking out of my shirt pocket. So if I stopped at one of the local food stores on my way home, I definitely looked like I worked there, at least at first glance. And since I was a regular, I knew the store layout well enough that when someone mistook me for an employee, I'd usually just help them out. It happened a lot. Someone would come up to me, ask where the peanut butter or rice or whatever was, and I'd politely say, "Oh, I don't work here, but it's over in aisle 5. Almost every time the other shopper would apologize, I'd smile and say, "No problem," and we'd both go about our day. Almost every time. Then one evening, I met her, the urban Karen. I was shopping after work, crouched down near the bottom shelf trying to read some labels when I suddenly felt someone grab my upper arm. Not tap me on the shoulder, grab me. I looked up, startled to see a middle-aged black woman standing over me, sunglasses perched on her head, dressed in a nice outfit that suggested she was solidly middle class. Still gripping my arm, she asked in a loud, condescending voice, "Do you speak English?" I blinked up at her, caught completely off guard. Yes, I said, more confused than anything. At first, I thought she was simply mistaking me for one of the store's employees who happened to be Chaldean Arab, just like the store owners. I knew the owners personally, was friendly with their family, and could attest that every single one of them spoke perfect English with the same Midwestern accent I did. But then Karen leaned in and hissed, "Well, I'm surprised that any of you," insert racial slur for Middle Eastern people here, "can understand English." At that point, I stood up, which made her drop her grip, and looked her dead in the eye. "Where's the whatever product she was demanding?" she snapped. Without a beat, I smiled politely and said, "It's in the center of aisle 10. For reference, this store had 8 aisles total. She didn't seem to notice. Without so much as a thank you, she turned sharply on her heel, looked up at the big sign overhead that clearly said aisle 2, and marched off on her fool's errand to find aisle 10. I went straight to the checkout, trying not to laugh as I paid for my groceries. Just as I was leaving, I heard a very loud, frustrated voice from the far end of the store yelling, "Where the hell is aisle 10? I felt a little bad for my friends, the owners, since they were now stuck with this woman and her attitude. But I can't lie, the mental image of her stomping around looking for an aisle that didn't exist was so satisfying that I grinned all the way to my car. The next time I came in to shop, the owners asked me if I'd heard about the crazy lady looking for aisle 10. We all had a good laugh about it, and they told me she eventually stormed out muttering about how no one would help her. Sorry there wasn't a big dramatic confrontation, no shouting match or security escorting her out. But honestly, seeing Karen tie herself in knots because I pointed her toward a non-existent aisle might have been even better. Sometimes the best revenge is just letting someone look like a fool all by themselves. She grabbed you, insulted you, threw out a slur, and you still managed to keep your composure and respond with just the right amount of petty precision. You didn't just deny her help, you gave her bad help, and it worked beautifully. And our second story. Be careful what you scream for. I work as a support manager for a company that sells credit card readers and other services for processing money. Our story starts with a phone call that one of our newest staff members received. The caller does not introduce themselves and instead loudly demands to speak to no less than the CEO of the company and will not give any information aside from his repeated demands and some indirect swearing. Normally, this would earn them a terminated call, but I want to know who has the balls to scream at my staff, so I have him transferred over. Having had some of these calls before, I introduce myself with a very fancy title and ensure the caller that whatever his support needs are, I can handle them without any issue. The CEO is busy at the moment, and I'm next in line in the support organization. This is not entirely true, but it works to calm people down and get them to tell me what's actually wrong. The caller is named Steve. Not just any Steve, mind you, but Steve, the owner of Steve's Cafe. And not just one Steve's Cafe, mind you, but the owner of all 7 Steve's Cafes. Steve is offended that he was given to me and not the CEO like he demanded. He's the owner, you see, and needs to talk to my owner, not me. I don't own 7 cafes, and I certainly don't own my company, so I can't understand Steve's needs and can't make the hard choices he needs made. I again assure him that I do have the position and authority to do anything he requires. I'm the manager of the support department. I can make any changes he requires. I can set up new accounts or order new devices, anything. He only needs to tell me his problems and I'll provide solutions. I will support him. The words are immediate and aggressive. Can you cancel my accounts? Well, yes, I can. I inform him that we only need a written request to cancel. I also try to inquire why he needs to cancel his accounts. This is standard procedure. If he wants to close his account, then we close his account. But any feedback is useful. Is he leaving because our product was bad? Because our service was bad? Because he found a better deal? But before I can get more than a few words out, he shouts again, "Have the CEO call me. He has my number," and he disconnects. I report this up the chain. No email means no cancellation, but still bosses need to know. First thing next morning, I get invited to an emergency meeting by the CEO as well as a few other pertinent admins. We go over what happened, then I'm shown an email. Steve managed to find the CEO's internal email address and sent him an email complaining about one of his 7 stores having a horrible time with the product. He's demanding no less than the cancellation of all his accounts and a refund for 3 months of payments he's made for each, as the product is totally unusable. I checked the logs. The problem location does indeed have a problem. That started yesterday morning. They're not down, but they're having a bad time. There are no emails or calls informing us, just the screaming cancellation request. I send over the call logs, and we listen to Steve scream and curse at the support agent before he got sent to me. And then I hear 2 words that cue the malicious compliance. Cancel them. The meeting goes quiet. The CEO has spoken. We cancel all 7 accounts and shut down services. They start their day with devices that do not work. The calls come in. Again, the CEO speaks. That account is canceled. Follow procedure. So each manager calls me, frantically explaining that nothing's working. The staff apologetically tell them that their account was canceled per the owner's email. We can no longer provide support. Shortly thereafter, the owner calls in, once again screaming to turn them back on. Uncancel them this instant. Get the devices working. He's losing money. I check with the CEO, and after receiving a nod, I say, per your request made over the phone yesterday and your email this morning, your accounts have been canceled. Steve just gets madder and says he didn't mean to actually cancel them. He just wanted to let us know what would happen if we didn't fix his issue. He continues to yell. I let the CEO know, and at his request, I transfer Steve to his office phone. I wish there was a satisfying ending to this story, but Steve and our boss talked. Steve was informed that his behavior was unacceptable. Steve admitted that he was expecting expedited service and possibly a discount when he threatened to cancel. He didn't really want to cancel his accounts. He just wanted support to take him seriously and transfer him up the chain so he could get faster, better service. There was no real apology, though both I and the initial support agent were told that Steve would behave himself from now on and to report if he didn't. Services were resumed and all 7 locations were opened a bit late. The one location that did have issues yesterday got on the phone with the support agent and were sorted out in a reasonable amount of time. All is right in heaven and earth. But I do hope Steve learned that threatening to cancel your account sometimes leads to you canceling your account, and not to a discount. And our last story. Neighbors tried to steal my land, ended up paying thousands. Yesterday was one of the strangest and most infuriating days of my life. I came home around mid-morning, coffee still in hand, to the sound of hammering coming from my backyard. At first I thought maybe a contractor was working on one of the neighbors' projects and had accidentally wandered into our yard. We've had that happen before. But no, when I got close enough to see through the corner of the garage, my jaw dropped. My neighbors, Mark and his wife Denise, were standing in our yard hammering wooden stakes into the ground, each topped with a bit of pink ribbon. I stormed inside to tell my husband, "You're not going to believe this. Mark's in our backyard putting up stakes." He blinked at me, stunned. "What do you mean stakes? Like for a fence?" "Yes, pink ribbons, hammer, the whole deal." He marched outside while I grabbed our deed paperwork. I watched from the window as my husband confronted them. Mark didn't look remotely apologetic. "Oh yeah, we had a surveyor out this morning," Mark said casually, wiping sweat from his forehead. "Turns out this 10-foot strip of land actually belongs to us. My buddy, he's a surveyor, found that the original corner marker was damaged, so he set a new one for us." That was the first red flag. No licensed surveyor I've ever heard of just moves a property marker without a formal report filed with the county. The second red flag? There had been no surveyor in sight when I came home. It was just Mark with a hammer and Denise holding more stakes like she was ready to play some sort of twisted game of backyard horseshoes. We went inside to grab the paperwork, already suspicious, but when I glanced out the window again, I nearly screamed. Mark had started cutting down our trees. 2 of our smaller trees were already gone, cut at the stump, and he was halfway through felling a third when my husband sprinted back out to confront him. "You can't just cut our trees down," my husband yelled. "We're getting our own survey. Until then, you don't touch anything else." Mark shrugged, completely unfazed. "Well, I've got a fence crew coming on Saturday. They're putting the posts in right along the new property line. Those trees will have to go. You might as well move your shed, too. It's on my land now." I couldn't believe his audacity. We've been paying property taxes on this land for over 20 years. Our shed, our trees, our landscaping, all of it's been here since before Mark and Denise even bought their house. Within an hour, 2 sheriff's deputies were pulling up. Apparently, Mark had called them. They told us calmly that there was nothing they could do. "If you don't like it, get a survey," one deputy said. "We are getting a survey," I said, "but you're telling me he can just cut down our trees and build a fence before we even have a chance to verify? He's literally tampering with county property markers." The deputy shrugged. "If his survey's wrong, you can sue later and get it corrected, but we can't stop him from building." I wanted to scream, so we started calling every surveyor in the county until we got one willing to come out on an emergency basis, but the earliest appointment we could get was Friday, just 1 day before Mark's big fence party. Friday came, and so did the surveyor. I don't think I've ever been more nervous waiting for somebody to finish their measurements. When he finally knocked on the door, he was holding a rolled-up copy of the survey and a grim look on his face. "You were right," he said, unrolling the map on our kitchen table. "The original marker is still intact, and his new marker is 10 feet over the actual boundary. This strip of land is entirely yours, your shed, your trees, all of it. He has no right to touch anything here." We called our lawyer immediately and had him send Mark and Denise a cease and desist letter along with a copy of the survey results. But just in case they didn't take it seriously, we also filed for a temporary restraining order. Saturday morning, bright and early, the fence crew showed up. We were ready. My husband and I walked outside, documents in hand, just as Mark came swaggering out of his house. "You're too late," he said smugly. "They're putting the fence in today." "No, they're not," I said, holding up the survey, "because if they dig one post hole on our land, we'll own their equipment by the end of the day. And you'll be paying for every single tree you cut down, plus damages." The foreman of the crew looked at the paperwork, looked at us, and then looked at Mark. "Yeah, we're not touching this until you sort it out legally," he said, loading his guys back into the truck. Mark turned to beet red and started shouting about stolen property and fake surveys, but it didn't matter. The sheriff showed up later in the afternoon, this time on our call, and explained to Mark that tampering with property markers is a felony. He'd either pay for the trees he destroyed, remove the stakes, and back off, or he'd be facing charges. We just got word from our lawyer that Mark's now on the hook for triple damages for the destroyed trees, legal fees, and survey costs. Between that and the fine for tampering with the marker, he's out several $1,000s. The audacity of hammering in stakes themselves and then immediately cutting down your trees before you even have a chance to react is absolutely unhinged behavior. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.